Welcome again to another instance of the Michael Pulowski experiment. This is actually the first time I have a fellow Pulowski on the show. This is my dad, Jim Pulowski. I've actually been looking to have him on the show for quite a while, and actually we just had a topic the other day that I think a lot of people would find interesting. My dad's been a teacher for, a year longer than I've been born, so 29 years?
Oh, longer than that, 31.
30, okay, including student teaching and everything?
No,
Oh, really?
31. Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
started teaching here in the United
Oh,
States
that's
before I
right.
went to
That's
Venezuela.
right. I
Yeah.
forgot. Okay, so you'll teach for 31 years. So you've been doing it for enough time to having a unique opinion on what's going on more recently, taking kids out of school. So I wanted to have you on and discuss that. But I also want to say that anyone who's watching this, if you think you have an opinion that other people might want to hear, just let me know. I'd like to set up some time and we can record your thoughts just like I am here with my dad. So, yeah, we just had a conversation the other day, and you were telling me about kind of the effects. Well, I think it's twofold. You're explaining to me what the effects of the online teaching is having to the education process itself, but also more the social side of things for the kids. So, I mean, what to you probably stands out more? Like, is it the social need they have, or is it more important what they're losing maybe educationally, being outside of the actual school?
I don't know that you can answer that question one way that, fits everyone.
Yeah.
Everybody's a little bit different. Some kids have a strong social structure outside of school, and they're not missing anything socially.
Right.
And other kids really need that social structure that they get from school. So, I don't know that you can really answer that question directly. When you and I spoke, I think the interesting part of our conversation was, the part that doesn't get told every day.
Yeah.
I'm still a big proponent about going back to school. I think, for most of the kids, that is what they need. They need to be involved in their extracurricular activities. I don't think everybody understands exactly how important that is for many, many kids. Um, if it's show choir or a sport or band, drama. I mean, I sponsor the anime club, and even that is an important outlet for kids.
Yeah.
So, those things are, I can't say how important enough they are. Um, but I think there's a lot of advantages for a lot of kids being remote.
Okay. And yeah, we're getting into that too. That some of the kids who maybe, and I would argue that it's the kids who need the social. They probably do well because they're not getting that social pressure. Yeah, that was one of the things you were saying, that some of the kids who maybe they get lost in the blaze of,
Drama.
yeah, the drama, what's going on,
Yeah.
that in the absence
Yeah.
of the drama they can almost focus on their studies better and actually maybe get more of your attention directly, because you haven't mentioned it yet, you are a math teacher, and
Yes.
a lot of people struggle with math, and this is going to go online, and I would imagine a lot of the people that learn you're a math teacher are like, oh boy.
He's one of
He's
those.
one of those guys. So
Well, let it be said, I always saw myself as a science teacher.
okay.
And, Grandpa gave me the best advice ever, which was, when you go to college, if you want to be a science teacher, don't go to be a science teacher, go to attain the highest degree that you can. So he suggested me become an engineer.
Okay.
And I did, and it was the best advice ever.
Yeah.
So thanks, Dad. Um, and so what I noticed was, when I went to college, there were a lot of people that were engineers. And as that first year went, a lot of them dropped. As the second year went, even more dropped. And they were dropping primarily for the same reason: I can't do the math.
Yeah.
So that's when I realized math was a great gatekeeper for people. And I switched. At that point, it wasn't, going from engineering, I could have gone math or science. And so I went math because I thought that would help more people do what they wanted to do.
I I would. I mean, you're my dad, so I would argue it's a venerable cause because I think you have one. But I do think that, like you said, you see it as science. Math is just the language of science. So, I mean, like you said, it doesn't matter which STEM you're going to get into. You got to learn the math at some point, whether you get into the
Amen.
higher level stuff or not. And I really think, talk about the social side of things. I think the people who understand basic math, like I'm talking trig, the simple stuff, like I don't, it doesn't help my profession at all. But you can notice people who know their basics, and whether you speak the same language or not, math remains pretty similar.
And
It's the same.
biggest
It's
part
pretty
of
similar.
math, the biggest part, I think, my role teaching. I know a lot of times I'm teaching, trigonometric identities, and how many kids are ever going to do that? Well, probably none,
Right.
or very few. But the logic and the thinking behind it, the planning, those are the problem solving skills. Those are really the things that you're going to take no matter where you go, what you do.
Right.
And that's where a huge benefit is,
Well,
just learning how to learn,
I don't
learning how to
think I don't
think.
think I've ever mentioned this to you, Dad. Do you think it's almost like a boot camp approach to some people, where like you never really use, like you said, you never really use exactly what you did there. But for some people who get an A, like let's say they go on to be fashion consultants in New York or something, but they have a highly successful career. Do you think getting that A in your class back in sophomore year, maybe they struggled and they really didn't understand it, but like you said, proving to yourself that you could, because it is a puzzle. Math is always a puzzle.
Hmm.
It's there's one of my favorite things. Tiger, my teacher, always said is there's only one right way to do it. At the end, 2 plus 2 is always going to be 4.
Four, that's correct.
There's
Yeah.
always an answer to everything. So I think for some people, especially not having a career where it matters, doing well in it when they're early, it's almost like boot camp. It's like you're glad you did it, you're glad you got it over with.
Yes, and hopefully
And taking
your
pride.
takeaways are great.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what-
learning how to overcome a struggle.
Yep.
I mean, everybody needs to learn how to do
Yes.
that. And learning how to be self-sufficient. Anymore, I see that feel like I'm leading you off topic, but that's
No,
your
no,
job,
we're
not
staying
mine.
we're staying right on.
Anymore, it seems like one of the things kids need more than ever is learning how to be self-sufficient.
Yes.
They are very good with technology, but they're also not very good at technology, and that almost sounds like an oxymoron.
Yeah.
They're good at finding information. They're good at having technology. They're not always good at using it. That's what I found out.
Or to the full extent.
I mean, you know my technological savvy, and I know you're laughing, and it's well deserved.
You get the job
But-
done. You get the job done.
But when I was teaching online at the end of last year, I was, to my students, I felt like I was the technological guru, and all I did was a little bit of reading and figure things out for myself.
Yeah.
Although I can't. If any of my students ever see this, I have to say that we did a great job working together at the beginning to figure things out. Those first couple weeks were a huge struggle,
I'm sure.
and
Well,
I
it's new
need
for
to
all of
thank.
you. Yeah.
I need to thank all my students who did realize there was a problem, figure out a solution to it. We figured it out, and we got it going.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm
yeah,
sure
it was-
I'm sure you need the good feedback too, because it's not something you've done before. So you need those students who are going to tell you, "Hey, Mr. P, you could have done this a little better."
yeah, or hey, this isn't working.
Right.
I can't see this really
Yeah,
well.
I didn't know about
Yeah,
this assignment, or yeah, I can imagine.
Hey, this is no different than teaching math,
Right.
because
true.
they're actively involved in problem solving, figuring things out, gathering information,
Yeah, I
making
didn't think of that.
making a decision. Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, that does make sense though. Well, like you said, it's problem solving. It's you have an issue and not trying to avoid the problem. Just figure it out. Move on. Because I think that's one thing you've mentioned it to me before. It's that excuse making can be a big issue. That it's when you told me, I think one time you said when they sit down and do the work, most of them realize it's not that bad.
Right.
they
And I
spend
think that's true of all of us.
It's true of a lot of people, but especially when I think
Come on.
math is like it's that one thing everyone rolls their eyes at. So being a math teacher, you're coming with the castor oil for a lot of people, and I think it's your reminder to them to be like, it's not that bad. Just take the medicine. It'll be good in the long run, and just take my word for it, because I don't think kids a lot of times can see how beneficial their math lessons are for them in the long run. And maybe this is a good opportunity for you to mention, because like you said, you said any of the kids listening right now, there's kids who you've had graduate. You've told me plenty of stories, the kids who came back and said, hey, I'm glad. I mean, you have any of those offhand?
Oh, First, Shamiko. It's
Oh,
funny because
I met Shamiko.
Shamiko, I know.
Yeah.
But Shamiko now works with a friend of mine, and
Oh, really?
I remember, yeah, he works with. Am I allowed to mention specific names on air?
You're technically doxing people, but if you know them enough where they wouldn't care when they watch this, I don't think it matters.
Well, he works with a very good friend of mine, and he still touts the same problem solving. He never mentions the math. I have a little word I use with my students: cockroaches.
I love it.
And
Yeah.
there's an interesting story why I call my students. Well, we're all cockroaches,
Yeah.
not just my students, but cockroaches. Their sensory, their nerves are wired directly to their legs, so they literally start running when they sense danger without thinking.
Yeah.
And so they were able to react before they think, and that's what a lot of us do.
Yeah.
And
You
part
said
of problem solving is stop, think, understand before you make a judgment.
unlike a cockroach, which is running before it even knows why it's running.
Exactly.
Someone
So that's why I
opens the
picked
door, turns on
cockroach.
a light. Yeah, someone turns on a
And
light.
it's got a
and
little bit
cockroach
of
is running.
it's got a little humorous,
Well,
twist to it.
No one wants to be compared to a cockroach, but if we're actually making metaphors, it's not a bad animal to be insect to be compared to. They're very good survivors.
Yes, I agree. But so I mean, I'm happy that whenever he speaks of me, that's what he remembers, the problem solving. He doesn't remember what we did, and solving higher order polynomial functions. No, I said that because it sounds really good, doesn't it?
To make another plug for extracurriculars, Shamiko in particular was someone who fell in line with wrestling, who I think wrestling, which is another problem solving, I would argue, martial art. I think it goes hand in hand. I mean, my math teacher was also my wrestling coach. So, actually being a wrestling coach, do you think there's a correlation there between math teachers and wrestling coaches?
Well, see, and here's the problem when you look at just a few number of instances. You'd
it's all anecdotal.
venture to say yes,
But
no, I don't think so. There's
No,
very
really?
few math teachers. Yeah, very few
Okay.
math teachers that wrestle. I'd say we're on a minority.
well, it's funny because I know too.
Well,
so-
you better tell people that your high school wrestling coach, I was his assistant.
Yeah.
We both taught exactly the same thing. We're almost,
When you teach the same math, and you teach wrestling very similar, so it's almost you guys are a carbon
We
copy
do
of
get
each
along
other.
well.
I was gonna say you guys can be a carbon copy of each other in certain angles, but I think we veered a little off.
Yeah.
The main point I want to veer off there was just that people can really appreciate what they can get out of math. And to get more back on topic, we were going to get into the uniqueness of what's going on with the whole. Your initial point you had made was you're a proponent for kids going back to school. So I think that's what we should get back to. But you had made a point of math being useful to them. But let's maybe go back to a broader perspective on just school in general, because we can get back to math. But you'd mentioned extracurriculars being one. But I know other things that it might be the darker side of things, but like certain kids, they need to go to school to get out of the home. That forcing them to stay in the home can bring its own issues. And I know I was lucky enough to have you guys as parents, so I didn't really have to worry about
Thank
a lot
you.
of the things. Well, it's the elephant in the room in that because of you, I didn't have to deal with this problem. So this is a problem you deal with independent of me. And I just want to ask you, it's like, how prevalent do you think, I mean, you work at Garfield Heights, which is now a suburban urban school, but also you talk to other teachers. How often, not just in your school, just from what you know anecdotally of the area, how prevalent do you think kids who really need to get into school for the safety from their home is? You think, and I'm not even going to, don't throw a number, but do you think it's more than people expect or less than people expect?
Oh gosh, I deep down inside, my heart wants to say less.
Yeah?
I hope there's very.
I don't
few.
think anyone wants
I
to
really
think it's, yeah.
no. I really hope there's zero.
Yeah.
But you know that they're out there. I don't know of any. My experience with my 104 students was that most of them were very, very respondent.
Okay.
They finished everything. They were in it. They actually did far more than I expected.
That's good.
Under the circumstances. There were a few that lagged, but I never got a feeling as if something was wrong. Most of the feelings where I really thought something was wrong turned out to be absolutely nothing.
Good.
Able to get a hold of the kids eventually. It was more of, I'm sorry, but my aunt's kids are home. She's got to work. She doesn't know what to do with them. So I'm over there.
I'm watching the kids.
I'm almost a living over there, and I'm not home to get into my stuff, and I can't take my computer with me because my 2 little sisters need it at home, and you know what I mean.
Right.
And so those were the situations we're getting into, which was part of what I saw. I saw a lot of my students who they were out during the day working.
Yeah.
I had one of my kids. He's like, every time he would email me, it'd be like 11:30, and
at night.
He's
you're
like,
saying?
Yeah, he'd email.
That's when he could get on, I'm sure.
He was working during the day.
Yeah.
He'd go work and then he'd come home at night, do his schoolwork. I have no problems with what he did. He did great work.
Yeah.
He always did. He was a solid B student. But he always did find work. But he's just I'm working during the day. So I'm like, yeah.
Well, that's
good
what
for you.
That's what I was gonna say is maybe because I'd let in for maybe problems at home. But do you maybe to change the question? Do you think that having families that would normally maybe be a little more scattered is bringing them together more too? Because you mentioned like all the kids are at home now. Do you think that maybe the brothers and sisters are bonding a little better now? That they would have, like, if they all went to school separately?
And I don't mean to make this a cop-out, but in some circumstances, that's going to be great.
Yeah, exactly.
And in others, it's going to be worse. I mean, I'm not saying I know that there are struggles out there.
Yeah.
They're serious struggles. And the other end is, how much of it is a facade that I just wasn't able to see through. I worry about that as well.
Well, and I know you've taken a few courses recently on being able to better understand that too. You mentioned one in particular that really helped you out. I don't know, is that because that was what the end of last fall that you had taken that course? It's almost
last summer. Yes, last summer.
I'd say it's almost
teaching with poverty in mind.
Yeah. I would say that's
yeah.
almost prophetic towards what you're dealing with now. I think a lot of what you told me you learned, you're applying a lot more often than you probably imagined when you took the course. Is that fair to say?
It was fabulous. Yeah.
And I remember you were
excellent book.
Ironically, you were dragging your feet to take the course because you're like, oh boy, another.
Well, yeah. No, this one I didn't drag my feet to take
not
this one.
Dragging your feet metaphorically, but.
Yeah, I actually really look forward to this. This is what I chose.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I chose this. I look forward to it because I realized that there was, I've been in my job for the last 30 years.
That's why I
29.
That's why I figured extended learning at your stage might be something like the books they're probably referencing were written back when you were already teaching in some of these circumstances.
Yeah, I want to say this book was written in the late 90s.
Okay. That's probably an earlier reference.
I don't remember,
but I'm just saying, yeah. I could only imagine being in your shoes, getting a lecture on someone who wrote a book like 10 years ago, and you're like, my career's 3 times as long as your experience on this book, that kind of deal.
I don't know. I've also learned that there are a lot of young people that have less experience but are very wise. They're very smart. They've got a lot to learn. I try not to dismiss what people know. There's usually even if they don't know as much as they think they do, there's usually something in there that's
something to take away from it.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's the real wisdom of it, is to be able to take something out of anything. But I mean, I was just getting into the idea that you seem like you've been pretty prepared. I remember initially you had your concerns about switching to online, but it seems
I told you I'm technologically challenged. So.
Right, but I mean, I wasn't even referring to that as just I know you tried to do your best job, and I know looking back in retrospect, you were a little worried for a while, and it seems like everything's going pretty smooth. Assuming we already talked that it would be better that the kids go into school, but Let's start with the positives. What do you think are going to be the good things about having the 2021 school year online? What are the things you're looking most forward to? And then maybe we can
Well,
get into some of your concerns too.
I've been spending a lot of time, as I told you yesterday, I spent all day learning new technology, different ways of presenting online because we will be going back remotely.
Hmm.
So for me, I'm a guy that's in the last part of his career, and yeah, I never wanted to be that teacher that let technology pass him by, but it just you look around, it just happens so quick, and you're like, oh my gosh, I really am behind.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much that's developed. I mean, every year there's a volume of stuff. So I've spent a lot of time doing just that. Fortunately, Garfield Heights put together a really good online course to teach us how to teach online.
It's good.
Novel, isn't it? Great idea. And so I've been spending a lot of time doing that. And you know what? For me, it's really refreshing. Nothing's stale anymore. The math never changes, but now the delivery is so different. The way you package it has to be different. And you can't teach a lesson online like you did in class.
Yeah.
You really have to rethink how you present it and how
like
what
you
the
said,
students
that's
have
got
to
to be
do.
reinvigorating to be able to do something you've been doing for so long in a new way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for me personally,
especially I
it's
was
been
going to
wonderful.
say, especially if it reaches the kids better. Is it do you think that since this has changed, it's a small sample size, obviously, it was just the end of last year and what you've been dealing with now, but would you notice any uptick in, I don't know, what your metric would be? Test scores is obviously what the state looks at, but for you, I'd say like retention of knowledge is probably one of your big metrics. Do you think that there might have been an uptick in that short amount of time, or?
I can't
Too small?
say that yet. The end of last year when we jumped into this, what really that's what we did. We jumped in.
Yeah.
It was figure this out and figure it out yesterday.
Right.
Which, fortunately, we did have some good leadership at school, and I was able to get on my feet offline, if you would.
Right.
And put together, I thought, a pretty good.
Because it happened pretty
good
suddenly.
Online.
How much?
Oh, it happened immediately.
Yeah, I was going to say, how much
like,
foresight did you get before the kids came out of school? Because I'm sure there's a couple days where you weren't even set up yet. I personally, I don't
it's not
remember.
like when we went online. It wasn't like I went online with the whole program put together. That's not true.
Right.
I went online.
I didn't think so.
With something to do. I literally went online that first week.
Yeah.
And gave them review work to do, which actually turned out in retrospect to be a very wise thing to do, because what I didn't expect was for my students to be as technologically challenged as I was.
As you were, yeah.
Right. So I didn't really go into teaching math that first week. Was just, let's figure this thing out.
Yeah.
Let's just figure everything out.
So the review work was probably good for both of you, actually.
Oh yeah.
So it gave you some time. That week. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and it probably took another 2 more weeks to really see the bigger picture, get things in. But again, I was teaching online like I would have taught in class, and that's just not a good model. The two, I mean, it may work, but it doesn't work as well. Yeah. So, you have to really step back and deliver the content differently. The activities that kids do have to be different, and so that's what I'm working on all summer, trying to get this ready to go. Yeah. I say all summer. The last couple of weeks I started, and I want to give Garfield Heights administration a plug, because the course they put together was great. And Mrs. DiMichelle, she's the one teaching it. She's doing a great job.
Shout out to Mrs. DiMichelle for doing a good course and preparing you guys. But that's great to hear. I mean, the only other thing I was going to say on that topic was to say, do you have any potential concerns that, especially given your 30 plus years of teaching, It sounds like you're prepared, but what's the biggest thing you're worried about being missing that you've had for
No,
30
no,
years?
no. I'm not prepared. I'm getting prepared.
You're getting prepared.
Oh boy, yeah.
But
I'm
like,
sure. I'm sure that as school starts, I will go through the same learning curve
oh
as I
yeah,
am now. I'll be better prepared,
yeah,
but that means I'm going to have more things that need to be evaluated, um, more things that could go wrong.
right.
So,
Well, yeah.
oh,
Well,
it'll
because
be a learning. It's still going to be a learning curve.
yeah.
But I think the presentation in the class is going to be a whole lot better now than it
And
was at the end of last year.
so you've explained it to me, but you've been broadly explaining what it's like. But let's go into exactly for maybe people who maybe have young kids or don't have kids at all, but are curious. What does a classroom look like? Because for me, it was always sitting at a desk around a bunch of kids. What does it look like for you, and what does it look like for your kids? Obviously, they're at their screens. Is there some sort of portal that they're like watching you through, or what's going on there?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I know you've
well,
explained it to me.
just like any good classroom teacher should not be doing one thing all the time.
Yeah.
Everybody's been in school, that gets really slow and boring. It does for me too, I'll be honest with you. So, kids need to explore, they need to think, they need to problem solve, in class as well as out. So the nice part about going online is that kids are going to be doing a lot more of their own research. They're going to make meaning by themselves. So, you know, the basic framework now that I'm following is we're going to frame the lesson. Start, with like the first lesson I'm putting together. We started with just questions, background knowledge, but I ask it in such a way that all the questions were a little misleading.
And to interject, I don't think you mentioned it to this point, but you're a geometry and pre-calc teacher.
Yeah, I was working on a geometry lesson.
Right. I mean, something we know that I don't think we said out loud yet. So.
Right. So, but that the objective there at the beginning was to take words, because most of the words in geometry people know: point, line, plane. There were things we know about, but we don't really understand the fine details.
Or the definition. I think that's one thing
Right.
I know you and Mr. Francis both hit home on, is the definitions of what they are is very important.
Exactly. Math is very, very stringent in its definitions.
Yes.
And so we're taking a look and just create that need for why definitions are so important and why we need to have the definition. So basically the lesson is create the need, get them interested, give them a hook, let them explore on their own, give them just a scaffolding that they need to start putting together their own information, find their own definitions, be able to draw their own pictures and that sort of thing. And then in the last part, we're both going to be doing some explaining. So that's when we'll have, I'm not going to use Zoom. We use Google Meets, but we'll be online talking and interacting. There's some lessons that just need to be done directly. And so I will be doing my explaining, and they will be doing theirs. So
that's like presenting the class essentially. You're passing the torch to them. The baton.
Right. So then they're going to be taking their summaries, making their video clips, and submitting them, and then they'll have the option of letting everybody see what they said, or they can just let me see. But that's actually part of their assignment. Yeah, that's part of their assignment. Is they have to summarize what they've learned and give it back.
Well, and just looking back on my learning, I was, I think I told you back then, but I was the kind of kid who I showed my answers a lot to people. But I look at that all through school. I learned showing people my answers all the time. Actually, myself is like, when I showed people my answers, I had to learn better, because sometimes I would fly through my work and I didn't really think twice on it. But it's like when you show people what you did, it helps me as the person who did the work remember, because now I have to explain it. But also some people, like the teacher, you saw the way the teacher thinks, but sometimes you need, especially just someone your age, to explain it also. That I think
invaluable, Michael. You're very intelligent. Yes, invaluable.
I was gonna say, I think some people with this math complex in their head, this fear of math, they might think to themselves like, well, of course the teacher can figure out. Of course the teacher is going to figure out. But like when you can see someone else your age in your class who's dealing with the same things you're dealing with, they can explain it just as clearly. It kind of gets rid of the mystique behind it not being solvable. And now is that?
Well, yeah, the explanation comes in a very layman's way.
Yeah.
Just very, very simple terms. It gets right to the heart of the matter. Whereas, especially math teachers, because of our background, we tend to be very technical and very accurate, very precise, which is not always easy to understand.
Right. Yeah, that's actually probably the biggest thing, is just getting right to the point. Is like, well, Mr. P said this, but if you just do this and this and this, you'll have the right answer. Which probably isn't the best teaching explanation.
Well, no. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's my job, to look at it and say, you know what, he's absolutely right, but this is what you got to be careful of. This is where, the conciseness gets around it, but your lack of vocabulary or
skipping
exactness.
For me, a lot of times it was skipping steps.
Yep.
But one thing I learned about math all the time was, and this is why I really enjoyed having math. And I don't think we actually ever talked about this, which is cool. We're doing it on a podcast. But I know Mr. Francis kind of rapped me on the knuckles a few times for this. Is I would, especially in geometry, find a way of skipping a step. I'm like, hey, well, Mr. Francis, you taught it like this in class, but I realized that on my homework I could just fly through it if I just did this. And he goes, yeah, but what if I make it to the second power, or what if I make it all over one,
Exactly.
And I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, you can't do it when you start doing like that. I'm like, oh, so that to me was probably, that expanded my mind so much, is that I was looking for all these shortcuts to things, and it was the way math can just flip everything literally on its head sometimes. When you think of how you'd lay it out on a plane, it actually will literally invert itself, and it completely throws off the math. And now you have to think differently, and that's the whole fun of what, I don't know. It's funny that I'm a math teacher's son, but I gotta say that my math knowledge was not. I developed it pretty independently of yours, and it.
Well, this is probably the most we've talked about math in all the years of your schooling.
I know.
Remember, I begged you, please just tell me what you're doing.
I know.
I want to help.
Well, it's because you did a good job of setting me up early, so by the time I was up at the batter's box, I was not afraid to swing, man. That's all it was.
Give yourself credit. You're a smart kid. You were able to do just like we're talking about. Think independently, problem solve. Not afraid to tackle a problem and solve it.
Yeah.
It's always been your advantage.
Well, I'm gonna pass it back to you one more time because you set a good example, but I did. I walked the walk on my own. So now that we're done jerking each other off, let's get back to the topic. Because really, I think this classroom is probably going to not go away. I think that's the biggest takeaway of what's going on. Whether COVID remains a concern or not, I think all teachers are going to have to deal with what you're learning now.
I don't want it to go away.
Okay. That's perfect.
I tell you, we'll take a look at. I told you I had 104 students in the spring.
Yeah.
And one of the things I noticed was there's a lot of kids who really wanted to learn. And you've been in class before. There's a lot of kids in that class with them that don't really want to learn.
Nope.
They want to be social. They just want to be a thorn in the side, whatever the case may be. And it detracts from what I can do with them. Well, with online learning, those kids, they were with me all the time. I think, if anything, they probably got a better education than what I could have provided in class, because
there's no distraction.
On a regular basis, they were coming to me with their deep thoughts, whereas in class, I'm still down a little bit lower trying to answer this basic question, and they're done with it, moving on to the next thing. And here we are having our Google Meets, and we're face to face talking about some things in depth that we never would have had that opportunity to have that discourse in the classroom. So what I found was I pulled all those kids together, and it was amazing who they were. They weren't always the ones you would think that would be that excited. I think there were a lot of kids who didn't have an audience and were really able to focus on themselves, and the social aspect of school didn't get in their way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, you're saying Just to be specific, the kids who were good students but spent too much time and focus on getting attention, maybe in class,
Yeah,
because
they're
they're
being social.
right. Well, they saw the opportunity with their peers more important than the opportunity they had with you.
Right.
Is that a good way to put it?
I think that's a very good way to
And
put
now
it.
when they're at home in
And
front of a computer and the opportunity with you is the only, well, not the only opportunity, obviously, you can do whatever you want, but like, you makes you more readily available to them than the distraction of their peers.
exactly. And consequently, I was really, really impressed with how well some kids did.
Yeah.
Um,
Is that probably one of your biggest surprises about all this, or?
that was probably my biggest surprise.
Yeah.
And almost ironic. It seems like I had more deep conversations with kids being further away from them than being in class with them every day, because there were all 25 of them in a room at one time.
Right.
Whereas, when I'm online, there might only be 6 of them at a time. But, you're getting to all. Now, on the other hand, there were some kids, like the young man I referred to before that worked all day. I mean, he did the same good job that he always did, but I didn't hear from him much. Every once in a while, he had an issue. He would,
But that's the
send
thing
me an
is when he
email.
needs to talk to you, he's still got a hold of you.
Right.
I
So
was going to say is you're almost probably more, ironically, more approachable from home than you were in the office because it's not because I know you hold office hours,
because
but
there were 24 other people around us.
exactly. And I know you always hold the office hours, but in the morning, but that can be a little daunting. Some people don't want that face to face, so maybe the one-to-one over technology is a better opportunity for a lot of kids.
It was. Now, I'm sure,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that online learning was best for everyone, because that's not true. Of
course
I
not.
think we started the program by saying there's no one way that's good for everyone.
Of course not.
But I mean, and
Everyone is
what I
different,
think
and everyone
spurred
learns different.
this podcast was that you wanted me to say, wow, most people don't know all the good parts. We never heard the other good things that happen.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, go ahead, sorry.
No, I say that, and I'm just, as I'm now reflecting back on that, one of the things that I did notice was I had a lot more kids learn to be independent, or at least were able to work independently, more independently online than they were in the classroom, just by need. Obviously, they're at home by themselves. They need to be able to do things. And so that's one of the issues that I've noticed in the past few years is kids are less independent. They like to have their hand held and move through it, and I'm not really good at doing that as a teacher. I don't think it's a good thing. So frustrations a lot of times were there, and then kids say, you're not going to answer my question. I'm like, I did. I told you to look right here.
Right.
If you remember back in Boy Scouts, and Boy Scouts taught me a lot, never do for a scout what a scout can do for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And the same thing applies in teaching.
no. It's very apropos. I'm glad. I don't know. I don't want to sound condescending or anything, but I'm glad you got that from my Boy Scouts. That I'm glad that me going through Boy Scouts was able to help you as a teacher.
Well, and I don't know that the lesson was new, but the words were, and I like the way the Boy Scouts packaged it.
Sometimes,
same thing applies
sometimes you
in
just
the
need a
classroom.
reiteration. Like sometimes learning something is just relearning something you already knew, just reiterating it in a way that kind of hits you from that spot that makes a little more sense.
Right.
Yeah. But I'm glad. I mean, we're at 38 minutes right now. That's a majority of what I wanted to get through. But is there anything? The one thing I was gonna say is we can, if you want to go longer, we can maybe conjecture what the classroom of the next 5 years is gonna look like. I have a thought. Do you want to lead in first? Give yourself.
No, go ahead.
I suspect that it's going to be a bit of both. I don't think you're going to get solely in classroom. I think there's always now the online resource is going to the cat's out of the bag now. I feel like if you're a teacher and you're not implementing whatever avenues are available through technology and through these really essentially what we're using right now, webcam, microphone, email, same channels that have always been there, but now I think the groundwork has been laid out where you're not going to lose it. But also, I don't think it's going to. That's the follow up is I think there's going to be a bit of a regression back to the classroom too. I think you're going to have solely online programs, but I think the best model looking forward is going to be a bit of both, a hybrid. It's you need to go in, you need to. I think one of the main things that is missing from all this is presentation, online presentation. Um, Based off of my career expertise, my professional standpoint, I see a lot of kids that are the age you teach have a hard time ordering their food at a restaurant.
Mm.
They have their parents do it a lot of times. That's a little thing I noticed just anecdotally off myself. But in general, a lot of kids struggle with talking to anyone outside of their mode of usual conversation. If I had to put it very concisely, they remain infantile, or no, what's the word? Infantilized. Infantilized. They stay in a state of being like a child for too long. Where I'm seeing like 16 to 18-year-olds, I'm like, you're getting chicken tenders and you can't even order it for yourself? Oh, no, don't worry. The barbecue sauce, it'll be honey mustard. It's not going to be too spicy for you. You know, that's the what I see. Obviously, you're gonna have plenty of kids who are great. They're gonna thrive, but they need that opportunity to. I mean, everyone hates in any job presenting in person, but it's something that has to be done. I think it's something that helps people get better in all avenues. You know, and if you remove that, I don't think it's smart for one.
Well, if you go on the assumption that there is no one right way for everyone,
right?
I do agree with you. I do like a mix. I don't think getting rid of brick and mortar schools completely is going to be a good thing.
No.
But I could see like actually a progression. Whereas ninth graders, you're in school all day.
Yep.
10th graders, you're in school, but you have options to go online. If you choose to be in school all day, great, you can do it. But there's going to be some 10th graders who are going to say, hey, can I do this and this and this online? And I would say, I'm looking at it almost like a merit-based thing, where, if you've proven that you can do this.
If you're trustworthy, really, you're going to be diligent. Yeah.
And I really haven't thought out, exactly what the, parameters would be. But, if you've proven that you're able to work independently online, what I think this whole process has done, because online learning has been there forever.
It has.
I can't always attest to its quality. I know I've had a couple of students who went online and said, "Oh, Mr. Pulaski, you didn't learn anything. It was, I got through it, but it's not like, being in class." But I think that online quality is going to get better. And
I think this will be a catalyst for it. I think this is going to be a catalyst for it to get a lot better.
So you're going to see a hybrid, and maybe the teaching job in the future is going to be you've got 3 or 4 classes that you teach directly and 3 or 4 classes that you teach online.
I can see that. And
actually have options.
Because
let's face it, there are some kids that just need to be in school every day.
Oh yeah. But you struck me with the because I was just thinking of the model. I wasn't thinking of grade to grade. I could definitely see what you're saying, where like all 9th graders have to be in school. That makes sense, especially just being younger. But I could definitely see, especially it would almost make sense transitioning into adulthood too. Giving the longer leash, like you said, if there's a merit-based system where, and maybe even implement more like career-specific paths. I think that's one thing a lot of kids get upset about, and it's a criticism of the education system at large, is that it doesn't prepare them for careers enough. And maybe the whole online thing is it's like you do your basics, obviously, in class as a freshman, but like as you start to know what you want to do, and if you do know what you want to do, in 10th grade, 11th, and 12th, that's where you can maybe focus on more niche-based. And then who says you even need to take it with a teacher in the vicinity? Maybe you want to learn metallurgy from a guy in Seattle, but he's the best metallurgist in the country. Well, if you waste a semester, 10th grade, and then you learn you don't want to be a metallurgist, or you learn that's exactly what you want to do.
We're all thinking the same, because I thought of like if you want to be a plumber.
Right.
and there might only be you and one other kid in the school that really are interested in it. Well,
Mhm.
it's really tough to get a class for just 2 kids.
Exactly.
But when you can look countywide or statewide or even countrywide, and you can put together a good program that, the whole math is, plumbing math. You're still
Right.
learning the same material. You're just learning it more precise to plumber.
Exactly.
And then you can and here's where the problem comes in. When the state regulates what you have to learn in geometry,
You can't.
you don't have the flexibility now of teaching what plumbers need to know in geometry.
Dad, can you say
Does that make
that?
sense?
Can you say that? Oh, it makes perfect sense. Can you say that again? Because to the people that normally watch my videos, that is huge. State regulation is not something that libertarians are a fan of. And
Yeah, well, the
when
state regulates what I have to teach in geometry.
yes. So
Okay.
you're saying, and I think a lot of, to also go along that line, a lot of the people I talk to are tradesmen too. So I think they'd be, I'm speaking for them, but I think they'd be really happy to see an avenue where, looking back, if their high school could have been specific to their trade in particular, I think most people, and not even the people I talk to, but I think most people would be happy where if you're telling me that the math I learn is specific to the field I'm going to be working in, fantastic. Even if you don't stick with that field, if that's at the time what you thought you were doing, let's say you hate it in the long run. When you're 30, you're like, I can't believe I wanted to be a plumber. But at least you were planning to be a plumber and you were on the right path, and here's what the state would argue. So I'm gonna take the state's devil advocate stand. Is they'd say, well, you're gonna miss out on education. Is there really a lot of things that would be missed if, let's just stick with the plumber. If let's say the plumber would take a specific course. I know this is a hypothetical course, but do you think there'd be a lot more that the state version would provide that would be missing from the, say, more niche version? And it's obviously all hypothetical, but
Well, no, I'm gonna answer that directly.
Sure.
I can tell you that if I was the guy that had to put together that plumbing math class,
sure.
there's a lot of things I would just not do. I mean, I don't understand. The state says that all kids in geometry have to be able to do geometric proof, and I don't understand why. I like the logic of it,
Right.
but that's different than geometric proof. I mean, if you're going to college or you're going into STEM, yes, yeah, that's
You
definitely
need to be able to explain it.
you need to be able to. You need
Yeah.
to be able. You need the logic and the order of proof to do a whole lot of things.
Right.
But I don't know that you need that formal of a argument for
Any trade.
a lot of things.
Yeah,
Right.
any real trade profession.
I'd be getting rid of that right away.
Ah.
There's the list goes on.
Right.
But,
But you I like what you answered, but that wasn't actually what I was asking. What I'm saying is, if let's say I'm a proponent of the state, whatever would be missed. Obviously, you think that the proofs for majority people, it's not a big deal. Do you think that the average kid is really missing out on a lot of what's maybe pork barreled in these state regulated lesson plans or lesson requirements? I realize that I'm maybe, and if you want to not answer that question, as I'm starting to realize it, I'm kind of asking you to say that exactly what you do as a state employee is dumb, but I don't know.
let's put it this way.
I went to public school. There's a lot of stuff I learned that I thought was stupid, and from what I hear every year, they keep on adding more stupid shit. So I'll say that for myself because I don't want to have to make you also.
No, I don't. I do not believe the state curriculum is
Like the whole
is
Common
just,
Core. What I've heard from Common Core
But
is dumb. I don't know.
here's what I take a look at it. It's one size fits all, and
Yeah.
we've already made the assumption that that's not true on just about anything.
Right. Right. So why would we try it again? Yeah.
Wow, we got a whole new podcast here.
No, well, that's the beauty. That's why I said at 38 minutes we got through what we want. We're just getting a new topic again. You've obviously never listened to one of my Joe Rogan podcasts all the way through. You realize they go 3 hours, and they'll like those podcasts are like literally 8 different podcasts. Like they'll go on one topic, they'll go on another, they'll go on to another one. And that's what's fun about it, because I mean we're well off where I planned on scripting out. this we had a nice, like when we walked out in the Keys and it was like 3 foot for like felt like a half a mile.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like
I
that.
remember that.
I mean we're just walking out and we're turning back to shore and going, wow, we're pretty far offshore. That was man. That's
Yeah, the silver lining in that particular case was we really got your mother to sweat.
Yeah. Well, and that was a good vacation. I just want to take a second. Anyone who
But
hasn't been to the Florida Keys, definitely go to the Florida Keys. I'm glad you were able to take me on a vacation there. That was,
but if I were to kind of sum things up, yeah, it had teaching remotely had a whole lot of benefits for a whole lot of kids that I never would have predicted. Was it bad for a lot of kids? Yeah, and especially getting kids back into sports and back into music.
yes.
I'll tell you one thing that impressed the daylights out of me. We have I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 kids in our show choir,
Mhm.
and they still sang their music. Each kid
And from
sang,
home?
and I know a lot of people did it. Bands did it too. They recorded it separately. They put it together, and I'm just like the technological savvy. I having to put that all together, and then they sang together, and they sounded wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Well, a
I
lot,
was-
even the celebrities have been doing that. So that's
Yeah.
it's kind of going downhill or uphill, whatever you want to call it. But that's been a trend recently. Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah, I saw it first with our show choir, and I just
Yeah.
sat back and went, "Holy cow, this is amazing!"
I'm sure.
And so,
Well,
yeah, I mean, we're learning
to adapt.
new talents.
Yeah, we're adapting
we're
to
learning
it.
new talents. So
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, here's the thing: is we've talked about schooling for a while, but how long do you think the state's going to try to make this a new normal? Like, do you think there's going to be obviously the elections in November. I don't know if you want to avoid getting into politics or anything like that. But this is a podcast; you freely talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'm just a host, so. Do you think that this is something you specifically in your field are going to have to deal with for a longer time than maybe, like I'm more in a private business. I know that we want to get out of it as soon as possible.
well, one
The regulations,
it's-
I mean.
it really doesn't help me to speculate, so I'm
That's
not
fair.
going to.
That's fair.
What I can tell you is I'm really kind of energized by what I'm learning on how to present a class remotely. I don't think that stuff is going to be wasted when
No.
we go back to school and open up. I'm going to take a lot of elements with me, so there's going to be a really a big upswing from this. I think me as a teacher, at least my teaching is going to get better.
Oh yeah,
That's
it's a fresh
so
perspective for you.
and when we do go back to school, I'm going to welcome it with open arms. So it's kind of a win-win for me,
Yeah,
but it's not worth my speculation.
no, that's fair. I wonder sometimes how long this is going to keep lasting, because not to say that we obviously the fact that it's been giving us adversity is giving us an opportunity to adapt, like you said, and almost relearn things, get better at it. But the reason I bring it up is specifically with kids. Like, I wonder how I would deal with a lot of what's going on, and that was the reason I wanted to get into it. Is I just don't want to. I wonder how quickly the kids will accept it as normal. And I know, obviously, like my generation, we're going to be the idiots who can't accept it because we remember the way things were. But the kids might move on a lot quicker than I will. I'll put it that way.
Oh.
At 28,
Kids, that's what I'm thinking.
they're very
They're going to
resilient.
adapt. Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
What would be
my
nice-
fear is I don't want them to adapt that quickly. I want them to remember the way things are, be almost traditionalistic in a way.
Well, I hope when the dust settles, I hope we end up
that's what I
taking the good from everything and
Yes.
making sure we have a better system than when we started.
100%, 100%.
And if we can do that, maybe there was some good in it.
That was the goal of the podcast. Was I really wanted to highlight a lot of the good of what's going on, because I know, especially on the right-wing side of things, people are very disillusioned by the fact that there's online courses and their kids are getting taught in an online classroom, especially considering the fact that they grew up, they didn't have that. Your generation, generations past that, or even the Gen X, like the 30-somethings, they obviously were raised in a traditional classroom. So,
Well, something to consider, not only is, if you take a look, not only is education going online, but how many people now are working from home, and companies are going to look and say, hey, wait a minute, we don't have to have all these people in the office. It's actually cheaper for us to have you work from home. So now all of a sudden, people who have jobs that used to be in the office, they're home, they've got to learn a whole new way of working. And maybe this is a little bit of exactly what we need going ahead in the future. Learning how to work from home and how to be independent. When you got a problem, you can't always reach out to your neighbor, in the next cubicle over, because they're not there anymore. You've got to figure things out yourself. And maybe this is the way it's supposed to be. The two are going to grow together. And industry and business have always helped steer education. Let's face it, education hasn't changed in a long time, and maybe it's time that it really needs an overhaul. Maybe this is the best thing for it.
That is a really good, actually what I've heard be called white pill. It is the opposite. You have the red and blue pill. Black pill is hopelessness. White pill, and I learned about this on a recent podcast. Jonathan, I think, is the one who brought it up. He was on the show, and he mentioned the idea of white pilling, which is making sure you're staying on the good side and the positives, what is worth taking forward. And that's just it, is that I think a lot of people were black pilled, to be the converse, on the idea of the kids distance learning. But it sounds like there are a lot of good things to come from it. And I'm glad that we were able to get your take on it, being a teacher, and especially, like I said, I did want to outline the fact that you did have some worries, you did have some apprehension early on.
I was scared to death, I'll be honest with you.
Okay, yeah, I remember you telling me about it, and I'm just, as your son, I'm glad that you're more at peace with it, but also, politically, just societally, I'm glad that because you're okay, I assume more teachers are probably becoming okay. And I hope, actually, just another question, have you been talking with a lot of teachers, obviously within the school, I would hope, you guys are comparing notes and playbooks, but do you have any plans with, like, I know you've gone to teaching conventions, things like that. Has there been a plan for you to maybe take what you've learned to teach other teachers, or to look at maybe other math teachers that are doing the same thing or something similar? Because I think that level of cross-pollination might be good at some point, especially if this is going to be the way things are going to be moving.
Now, it's funny you say that, because remember, before we kind of delayed the recording of this podcast because I had to make a phone call.
Okay.
And it was to my colleague who I will be teaching with.
Okay.
And that's exactly what we were outlining, was getting together. And, I had put together some material and sent it to her, and she commented on it. And so with that was our conversation, was getting together and
that's good.
And outlining what we're going to do and how we're going to approach things. So things, start small and grow big. So I surely hope so, but I don't think that I'm on top of this. I mean, I'm still learning, motivated, but I got a long way to go before I start teaching people how to do this.
I would imagine so, but I know that's the fuel to the fire that keeps you going, and I hope that within a year you can teach.
I surely hope that we start seeing, podcasts where, people are sharing more of their stuff. I mean, that's what I'm doing all the time. People have their podcasts on how to use the technology, and I'm constantly, going through and looking at them and going back and re-looking at them, and because they're so helpful.
I'm obviously your son, so I'm very biased, but I respect your teaching style quite well, and I think you're also good at explaining your ideas. So, if anyone, I put your name here because my dad's not on Twitter. So if you'd like to be on my podcast, you can put your name there. But also, anyone who does podcasts, I know other podcasters do sometimes watch mine. If you'd like to have my dad on, just reach out to me at Mike Pause, because this is his first time being on my show. But I think you've got great ideas, Dad, and if anyone else would like to have you on, I can let you know if they let me know. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
Would you be open to the idea of being on someone else's podcast at some point?
I just can't imagine anybody'd want to hear what I have to say.
Well, that's how I think all the best podcasters have ever gotten started out. So, I mean, really, Joe Rogan is the guy I look back to, and I watched his first 100, and when I tell you they were awful, and the whole time he was saying, I don't know who's even watching this. Like, he's literally, like, rummaging through, like, his AV cords and, like, plug stuff in. He's like, oh, gosh, if anyone's watching this right now, this is ridiculous. And now the guy's got, he's the new Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson was the main guy back then.
Oh boy, he was. He was the only guy, I think.
Rogan's the new Carson, which is ironic. I mean, just to address podcasting real quick, because like Jimmy Fallon and like Colbert are like the guys who are literally habitating that sphere. But the thing is, like, that mainstream's become too mainstream, so you need someone like Rogan, who is like independent, not mainstream, but he still has that gravitas. Because I feel like the people who want that like late night interview form, have kind of split. Where you have the people who want it to be orchestrated and planned like the way TV wants it, and you have people more like me who want it to be more off the cuff and have a natural flow to it. So I think that's why you're seeing that, and that's why I don't know. I've always enjoyed talking to you, obviously biased, but I just wanted to offer it up in case anyone else agrees.
Yeah.
So
we'll take them as they come.
Yeah. Well, Dad, I was glad to finally have you on. We were just getting to about an hour, and I think we got everything out. Is there anything else you'd like to say? This is your chance.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for having me. This was, you've been asking me to do something for quite a while, and
how do you think it turned out?
First time, well, I guess that's. I tell you, I had fun.
I'm glad. That was my main goal. I
had fun. I enjoyed it, but I guess how it turned out, I guess that's for everybody else to decide, right?
Well, let us know in the comments. Don't disappoint my father. I don't think you. I was worried you were gonna make an ass of me at least once. So how about this? This is the end of video. Is anything you'd like to do to throw tomatoes at me?
Why would I do that?
Okay, we'll save it for another podcast because if I know you, you've been way too civil. This is the most civil hour you and I've had in weeks.
Well, and for those of you who don't know us, when we talk, it's usually we're throwing digs in between intelligent conversations. So
oh my God,
it's just the way we are.
Well, normally there's potty humor, so I'm surprised you were able to remain I guess it's because we were talking about your profession for an hour, so that's probably wise on your part.
I put my professional hat on.
That's good. Well, I was glad to have you, professional hat or not on. Obviously, you're welcome on any time. And anyone else, just let us know. It's been good, Dad. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
All right. Signing off.
Bye.